Welcome, welcome. This is the election day.
A post-mortem election day, sort of. The never-ending election. But
Never-ending election day, but we are here for Doc Talks for you. Again, it is post. You're right. My fault.
It is, but
we were hoping that it was going to be election day.
Yeah, we'd like to know, but that's okay. But maybe you are someone who, because we have this uncertainty about who's going to win, you might be a little bit more stressed. It seems like everyone is a bit more stressed right now.
Let's hear it. I want to hear it.
And you might be a little doida than usual. And a great stress reliever is
boom. We got
exercise,
a topic
right?
today is exercise, but what happens prior to exercise? We want to have a good warm-up. So what kind of ties into a good warm-up and just guidance through on things to think about and what you really want to add into your warm-up to make it effective. We do this all the time with clients, patients, anybody that works with Elevate, and we want to get them moving. We always want to make sure that their body is ready for movement as often as we can. So we create this pre-exercise warm-up for everyone, and it can be very helpful for making a more effective workout for you. Even if you just did the warm-up itself, that also could be a good way to start the day. So a couple twofold uses for the warm-up itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's an area that is vastly underappreciated for a lot of people because it's a lot more, even though you want to make sure that your heart's going, you're getting a little sweat so you're prepared for your workout, there's a lot of other qualities that you can really focus on to make sure you're getting the most out of the subsequent workout. And especially too, when you're very intentional about your warm-up, it's a great way to focus in on what's upcoming. I think especially now our attention spans are being pulled in multiple directions, and it's always hard to focus and be present on the moment. I think a warm-up is a great way of getting you focused in that regard to what you got impending in your training session. So we're gonna go through how we design warm-ups for our wonderful clients here at Elevate, and hopefully you can take a few tips and tricks from that.
Yeah, but like you said, intention is everything. When you guys are moving and doing a warm-up, just having a thought process behind it or some concepts behind it can be very liberating for your workout. So without further ado, let's look at some of the topics of today. First is going to be what are the main goals of a warm-up. To start it off, we need to prep our tissues for the load that we're about to put on them, whether that's PRing in a deadlift or warming up for your daily tasks for chores around the house. Both of those have their own tissue prep that we need to do. But tissue prep is something that we start moving tissues, whether it's passively or actively, to get those areas of our body to start experiencing movement. We'll get into what that looks like later, but the goal of tissue prep is to get the tissues to feel like they're about to be used, or get them in kind of like in the mindset that they're about to be used.
Yeah, it's just like if you were gonna play basketball. What does everyone do before they play basketball? Hey, let me get some shots up real quick just so I get ready for that. It's the same process here. The warm-up is essentially a way of having specific areas on your body with whatever exercises you're going to be doing, get their shots up, so to speak. And you'll get a lot more out of the moves by preparing your tissues for whatever activity you're going to be training for.
Yeah. Okay. And then we would also look at, again, looking at the movement strategy, like what are you going to be doing, and then how can we mimic that on maybe a low level first. So if we start to do something at a low level, say you wanted to pick something up off the ground. What does it take to pick something up off the ground? You have to flex forward, you have to grab, and you have to lift it back up. What are other ways that we can mimic that? We need to start figuring out those strategies on how to do low-grade movement for that first, and then we'll get into picking something up off the ground. That's typically called the deadlift, but that's another way to think about it. What do you have to do in the day, and then how can you make it very, very easy to start slowly getting into it as opposed to just jumping into picking up 100 pounds and you're not ready for it.
Yeah, and it's a great way to refine your technique, because if there's certain aspects of, say, the deadlift that you have a hard time with, well, you can break the steps down so you're working on those specific areas, which can help you when you inevitably go to train. It's just like playing a song. You got a whole symphony of all these little pieces. You might just focus on one specific part of that song until that's really good, and then you go to the next part. Same thing with movement. Break it down so you got specific aspects of the task that you want to do, and allow you to get more out of it once you get to that move.
Yeah. I think that leads into like the next one, like a limitation. If you were to break it down and find a bad piece, you know, you can really focus on that. So, you know, focusing on a limitation of that movement that is going to happen that day, hammer that stuff as much as you can. But again, you're not starting with the actual task at hand. You're starting at a low level of it, right? So if you can start at a low level, why not start low level and see if there's any chinks in the armor first? See if you can smooth that stuff out a little bit, and then attack it full force when you start feeling a little bit better. So identify some of those limitations, of working on them during a warm-up is crucial, you know, for progressing and trying to get better at those activities.
Yeah, and it's essential, because you can prepare for the movement all you want, but if you can't even get your body into the position that's needed for the lift, well, you're going to have a hard time with that. So it's important that you address those. So, for example, if we use the deadlift again, you know, Kyle, you mentioned that you got to be able to flex forward to get it up. Mm-hmm. Well, if you can't touch your toes, which we got a great video on how to do that, which we'll link to you. You may want to do things to improve your mobility so you can touch your toes. And then if you got that motion, now you can design some of your other movement prep stuff to take advantage of that, so it transfers better to the deadlift.
Yeah. Yeah, and what is it, I mean, so we have another topic. What's it mean to prep our CNS? What does that mean?
Basically, that's a good question. What that means is when you're doing something that's high intensity, whether that's fast or whether that's heavy, your central nervous system, brain, spinal cord, and all that has to increase the relative tension in all of your tissues so you are able to complete the task in a good manner. And so that's why when you sprint or you do something that's lifting very heavy, mm-hmm. you have to rest typically a lot more days compared to maybe just going for a run. And the reason why that is because not just of the local fatigue of the muscles, but because your central nervous system gets fried in a sense. So you want to make sure that you do things that ramp up your body's ability to coordinate all this stuff, which happens through the central nervous system, so you can complete the task. And that's what we mean by that. And so doing things that are explosive, but maybe not at a full intensity or even in just small amounts, can help assist with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the sprint was a perfect example. And then also touching on the point of, you know, there is fatigue outside of muscular fatigue. If you feel sore that day, there's also something else that might be driving your inability to complete another hard workout. It's that you can't rev yourself back up to that same level again. So again, when you're looking at a warm up, you might be able to try to do, you know, maybe it's like some fast jump ropes or some ladder drills, things that kind of get you to start having to coordinate and do something quick. And then that might tell you it's a green light for the rest of the day. You might feel like you're able to rev yourself up. Or if you're like, man, I feel like I'm fumbling over my feet, I feel like I can't, you know, coordinate my movements, it might not be a great day for PRing or getting something like really heavy done, or something that you're really trying to get at a high level, just because you can't do the simple stuff exceptionally well.
Yeah, that's a really good thought, because another goal of the warm-up is to let you know where you stand today in terms of how well your program goes. And that's there's some people who will use just a vertical jump, like you mentioned, as a marker to see how ready your central nervous system is. So if you jump one day and it's 3 or 4 inches less than what your norm is, that might not be the best day to push the envelope, so to speak. So you can use your warm-up to basically check in with your body, both at a force production level and a motion level, to give you an idea in terms of what you should be doing that day. And a lot of times you might not feel great, but then you go through the warm-up and it's like, oh yeah, okay, I'm ready, I'm in the mood to go, and then you get after it.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to humble yourself during those situations if you feel like it's not a great day to push, you know. Just because a program says you need 95% this day and you feel like you can only give 65% that day, that's okay. Like, programs are not a true representation of what's going to happen at the human body level. It just doesn't happen all the time. They've done research where they had people complete a program that was the same exact program, except one person or one group of people did the exercises as to the T as possible. So if it said 80%, they were putting 80% on the bar, they were doing a squat or whatever exercise it was. And then there was one group that said, okay, I'm going to listen to my body. I'm going to try to complete as much of the program as I can to the exact specifications of the program. And we actually saw better results for those people that could tone it down and then rev it up according to their own body. So use your body. Listen to your body as much as possible, and those things can be hugely beneficial for, one, longevity, but two, getting to your goal. You know, longevity is obviously something that we care about very much here. So if you're not a go that day, make sure that you're listening to your body.
Yeah, well, and that's the way your body has any adaptation, whether it's you want to put on more muscle mass, you want to lose fat, you want to perform at a high level. You can't just go hard every single day. You have to go hard, and then you have to give your body a chance to recover. And that's going to be different between people or among people, but also within you on a daily basis. For example, you might have had a hard day on Monday, and then maybe your next hard training session was going to be Wednesday, but you slept poorly on Tuesday because it was election night. And all of these other factors, and the kids were sick and all of this, and because of all that, you might not be as prepared as you normally would in other circumstances. So, to echo what Dr. Booth said, make sure you're listening to your body and adjust your program accordingly. The warm-up is a great way of forcing you to tune in to how you're feeling.
Yeah. So the next kind of area of creating this program is what fills in tissue prep, what fills in looking at your movement strategies. We're going to look at a couple of different things that we typically see in our program, kind of basically sections of our warm-up. So we'll have a mobility activation section, we'll have specific correctives, and then we'll have something that kind of ramps up our tissue temperature levels, and then traditionally followed by something that it is going to ramp us up. It's more of an explosive set. So mobility activation, those examples can be very, very wide depending on what the task is at hand. Any of your stretching that you currently like to do or is effective for you to do. Activations are going to be stuff that you want to target a certain muscle group or a certain area in your body, and you want to start getting that to light up. That's a perfect time to do it right off the bat. Start low level with some movements that are going to target those areas. So when we look at mobility and activation, those are probably the first things that we like to do for that for creating that warm up.
Yeah, and foam rolling is another thing too that might be sitting into that category. It's basically just doing very low intensity, slow paced, or even not moving activities that basically start to loosen things up if you've had a day where you've been sitting around chilling and not doing much. So it's important to go through that first, and then once we have that, we then go into addressing specific movement limitations. The way that we do that here at Elevate is through corrective exercise. And basically what that means is, with everyone who comes through here, whether you come to us on the medical side or you come to us on the performance side, we run you through an assessment to see what your limitations are movement-wise. And then we give you targeted drills to improve upon those things. And these could be if you do these, they're the big bang for your buck moves that if you can open up this area even more, it's going to allow you to do way more things on the other side, better. So we want to make sure we're doing things to address those areas. And that can be wide ranging and it's individualized depending on what your specific issues are.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, specific correctives, that's a good place to put it in right after you feel like you've targeted some areas with tissue prep, meaning the foam roll, the certain stretches, and then go right into what movements make you actually move mo better.
Mo better.
Mo better. At this point, so we've done some correctives, we've gotten our tissues ready for a little bit of movement and kind of juiced up a little bit. Now we need to raise the temperature of the tissue. We typically like to do stuff that's going to be not super complex, but something to get our heart rate up, and we can start getting a little bit of a sweat going. There's tons of variations of this. We like to use our assault bikes. We like to use our treadmills. We like to use slide boards, skipping, jump roping drills, all like little dynamic warm up at this point. Meaning, I think we've talked about that in the past. If you want to look at a dynamic warm up, those are skipping, any line drills where you're hugging the knee to the chest, butt kicks, those types of things. That's the timing of a good spot to put those. After you've prepped the tissue, after you've done some of your correctives, then you can start getting that tissue temperature up.
Yeah, well, and if you don't have access to some of that equipment too, or maybe you're someone who you haven't jumped in 20 years, you can also do just other types of movements, like doing a few different squats or lunges, or even crawling around on the ground, or just the possibilities at this point in time are endless. Even doing just jumping jacks or anything like that, just in place. You can really be very creative with whatever you do to get your heart rate going.
Yeah, I think the intention is to have sustained movement for a few minutes so that your heart rate starts to boost up and you start to create a sweat. So if you have that intention, you could dance for 5 minutes. I mean, I've tried to create a program for a lady once in the past, and she hated what I did. She absolutely hated everything that I did, and I was like, all right, well, I need to make this more fun for her. I need to have it be more interactive. I was like, what do you like to do? She's like, I like to dance. And I was like, okay, well, we're gonna do interval dancing, and
Cool.
It was fun for her, and she could do it. She completed it. She had some consecutive weeks of doing it, and that's what she needed to get out of her hole. And I was like, all right, I'm not a dancer or anything like that.
I was going to have you demo for us.
She said she's done like some Zumba type stuff in the past, and she's like, I really like that stuff. So I said, flick on some music for 5 to 10 minutes. That's going to be your warm up for the day, and it worked. So again, that sustained movement for a small amount of time that gets you to start sweating or perspirating. That's what you're looking for during for that time frame.
Next program I write, you're gonna come here on Wednesday, and we're gonna have like everyone doing the dance. It's gonna be great.
We'll see.
Yeah. And now, with the increasing your heart rate stuff, it's definitely faster than some of the mobility and the specific correctives. But you don't want to be on the tail end of explosive, because you want to build up into that. That's where, once you've done that stuff, we can now go to things that you're either moving faster or moving heavy. So this could be jumps, or even like pushing this ladder, or even sprints where you're going closer to your maximum effort, but not that you would do with your working sets. So a lot of times this could be box jumps for people, or repeated jumps, broad jumps hit here. We do a lot of med ball throws where you're throwing medicine ball heavily into the wall, sled pushes, weighted things where you're basically moving fast and hard, and that's
the resistance.
Yep, and that's just trying to bridge that gap for when we go into the really intense stuff.
Yeah. One thing we definitely use a lot of is kettlebell. We do some kettlebell swings, cheat cleans, things that are a little bit more complex than our warm up or our tissue temperature stuff, because like you said, you are starting to start moving a little bit more quick during the tissue temperature coming up, but not to the point where you're going max effort. This is when you get to have a little bit more closer to your max effort movements. So it starts getting what we talked about, ramping up your CNS or your central nervous system. This is what we're talking about. Throwing a ball hard into the wall, hearing the crack of the ball into the wall. That'll wake your senses up. That'll get you going a little bit, and that's usually it gets you kind of energized and ready to start. I'm gonna slang some weight around.
That's right.
And that's what you want. You want that stuff to really energize you. So. The explosive set is key for kind of the lift off onto what you're going to do for the rest of that day. It gets you energized, gets you ready and prepared.
Yeah, it's great. Now you've done all that. Now you're thinking, boom, let's go and lift some way heavy weights.
Hang on.
Hold your horses.
Hang on.
Hold up. Before you get into going ham on the exercise of your choice, you want to make sure that you practice the movement at lighter weights. Grease the technique.
Grease the groove.
Yeah. So if you're doing a deadlift, for example, you probably don't want to do 315 pounds for your first set. Just do the bar. Get used to the positioning, the technique. Maybe one that I always did was a rep of 8, and then I would add a little bit of weight, do a rep of 5, and then go to your working sets in that regard. Just anything that gets you used to that specific movement pattern, because a lot of the stuff we're doing leading up to this point aren't specific to the task at hand, but it does a lot of stuff that prepares you for that task.
Absolutely.
We want to make sure that you don't skip any steps and you really hone in on the technique for whatever move you're going to be doing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the first lifts, we actually had a very, very high level athlete in here. He does physique competitions. He's done it for years. Incredibly in shape guy. And so I asked him, like, what's he done to keep himself healthy? And he said, to be honest, one of the best things that I do as I warm up is I'll put something extremely light on there, and I'll do a set of 10. I'll still, I'll bump up very, very small amounts of weight, but I just, during those first reps, I'm slow, I'm controlled, I know exactly what's going to happen. I'm not bouncing out of the hole, I'm not, trying to create anything fast. I'm really tuning my body into what I'm trying to accomplish that day. And this guy's, he's the 1% of human athletes. He's just shredded beyond all measure. So, if he's done that with a lot of success, I think it speaks to what we're saying. Go slow first, get used to the movement, and then you can start bumping that stuff up progressively. It's a very easy, simple way to get good at those movements in the very beginning of your lifts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's critical,
Yeah.
and it is going to help reduce the risk of you potentially hurting yourself in here as well. Because if you aren't fully warmed up and then you go to do something heavy, well, that could potentially be a recipe for disaster. So anything you can do that gets your body ready for that, and that's, again, what led him to be as healthy as he was, or at least a contributing factor, is big.
He said 20 years of lifting weights, and he's like, yeah, I can't remember any big injuries that I've had that taken me out. And I'm like,
Wow.
That's really impressive.
That's awesome. I can't say that. I need to warm up more. Or get stronger, either of those two. Now, we've kind of given you an overview of the why, we've given you the components, but it might help you wonderful folks even more if you actually see what this looks like. So what Dr. Booth and I have prepared for you is we're going to take you through a warm-up for everyone's favorite exercise, the squat. So let's say today's your squat day and you're wondering, well, docs, how can we prepare to have the best squat we've ever had? We got it for you.
Yeah, and it's going to be abbreviated. Obviously, we're not going to go through every single thing for as long as we can, but we want to give you some of the components. So first off, we're looking at tissue prep. Tissue prep, pretty easy one. A lot of people understand what a foam roller is, but if you don't, it's this beautiful tool here. Very simple. It's literally a foam roll. So you can get these on Amazon, $5-10. If you have any questions on like where to get them, reach out to us. We can get them for you. So foam roll. We have a couple of areas of interest, right? So a squat, typically known as a lower body movement. So but it's not just the lower body. But for the sake of this, for the simplicity of it, when we are squatting, what joints are moving? We have ankles moving, the knees moving, the hips moving. We're dropping down into a squat and coming back up. So we need to have good movement around here. Calves need to be kind of ready to move. So calf, I like crossing over a little bit and rocking into a couple of spots on the calves. Don't forget that you go have the inside of the calf, you have the middle portion of the calf, and then the outside. There's all variations that you're trying to get into the calf. So rolling in, finding a spot. If you have to hang on a spot that feels maybe a little bit tight or you want to give it a little bit more attention, rock through, go through some movements at the ankle. Beautiful area to get the tissue mobilization and get a little bit of movement into the ankle. Next, we can get into quads. I'm gonna flip over, get the big beefy quads on there, and again, roll through, give yourself a comfortable position to get into, roll through, inside, outside of the quad. And then lastly, we'll look at the hips. So rolling onto one side, the hips, there's 2 bones on the outside of your hips. Make sure you get in between those 2 bones and then all the way to the back of the tailbone. So out to the side, find some sensitive areas. This is always a pretty sensitive area on the outside of the hip. If you need to, you can always rock one of your legs up over the knee and then intensify that just a little bit more. But again, you're finding all those areas around the hip. And again, you're just bringing awareness to the area with the foam roller. It makes things feel a little bit more smooth once you start moving them.
Yeah. And if you really want to get specific, obviously we don't have one here, but using a tennis ball or lacrosse ball, especially on that last one that you showed.
That's intense.
It is very intense. So kids, don't try this at home until the foam roller gets kind of easy and you're not really feeling a whole lot. But it's a good way to really get in deep into the hips so you can improve your motion. Now, you've done all of the movement prep stuff. Let's talk about specific corrective exercises. So like Kyle was talking about, you got to get certain motions at your ankles, your hips, your knees. So we want to do things that we have in our power to improve range of motion in that regard. One thing that I like that can improve hip range of motion would simply be doing just your classic on your back, knees bent, curl your hips up, arms out in front, especially if you're going to be doing a front squat, hanging out and breathe. Exhale and reach as far as you can. If you go ahead and tilt your head, go ahead and do it. It looks like I'm kind of at just the initial phases of my squat, right? That's especially the case if I were to do this on the wall in this position. If Kyle was the wall, like I'm talking to the wall here, and I lift up here and I get my legs and all that going, if you tilt your head, you will see that this is essentially the halfway point of the squat. If you have a hard time getting your legs going and your abs going in that position, it might be a bit more challenging to feel those areas in the squat. So that's a great way to prepare for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of assess, right? Mm-hmm. You know, assess to see if you got everything turned on right. And as you can notice, like when we're dropping down to a squat, we're still trying to keep our trunk in the same orientation almost all the way down. That's a really good spot. It's at the very bottom or close to the bottom of a squat. So you know that you can get there without losing it. Now you just have to be able to control it. So really good corrective there to start understanding your ability to get down into a squat. You know, the further that he might get down closer to the wall that I was trying to make. So if he got further down into here, so his knees get closer and closer towards his chest, and he's still able to maintain this. Yeah, that's great. You can still kind of see how much bracing ability or how much ability you have to keep the rib cage and the pelvis in the right position. So again, it's a lower intensity squat basically. And
my glutes and my hamstrings were getting a little toasty in that position, which is good. A nice little change of pace.
I did it to Dr. Couples. That's good. Yep. So again, that might be something that helps with hip positioning. If you're looking at ankles, you know, some really easy correctives. Just getting into maybe a single leg variation. So if we're going into a squat, that's both legs on the ground. Let's do single leg to make it easy for this person that wants to squat, and just make sure we can mobilize the ankle as much as we can, because we want to be able to get our knee over our toe and create a lot of movement down at the ankle. Don't demonize the knee going over the ankle. It can happen, given that you know how to control it. But again, if we start exploring these ranges of motion first and foremost, then we know that how far we can get into a squat is not just going to be limited by our ankles. If you find that is a limitation, we always know we can, and we've done this in past videos as well, bring our heel up off the ground, and now that heel being up off the ground, we can get deeper into a squat. So again, it's more of an assessment, but you can also use it as a stretch to get your ankles prepped for a squat.
Yep. So now you've gotten your hips and all that loosened up, you've got improved range of motion on some of the areas where you're restricted. Now we're going to kick it up a notch, increase the heart rate, get you more prepared for the actual movement itself. We have a lot of different moves for that. One of my favorite before you get to standing up is the drunken turtle. With the drunken turtle, you're going to essentially get knees here like this, which is, guess what, folks? The bottom of the squat. And just to loosen up your hips and your lower back, you're going to just roll backwards and forwards as much as you can. I like to do rounds of 8 to 10 just to get your body into that position.
I was hoping you weren't going to hit your head. That was really close. Really close.
You treat post-concussion. But that's a great move to just really open up a lot of areas.
Yeah, so again, try to mimic something that's going to be not the movement, but something similar. So now we're looking at maybe a little bit more of an explosive movement. So again, we're trying to ramp up the central nervous system. So what is a squat without a squat jump? So if we're going to go up and we're going to dunk a basketball, we're going to be here, squat jump coming up, landing, have a nice soft landing, kind of a stick into the landing. But again, this is after we've done the tissue prep, after we've gotten warm and we feel like our body's kind of ready to start doing a little bit more movement, and then we start ramping this up. If we want to do a jump, land, and stick, or we can do that repeated. Also, we can be here, and we can kind of keep that going as much as as many reps as we can handle. But again, that's the progression of maybe getting into squats later on.
And there's good research showing that if you do some of the fast explosive stuff paired with something heavier like a squat, you actually get greater amounts of loads moved and you can move faster in those when you pair those two things back to back. It's called post-activation potentiation.
PAP.
The PAP.
The PAP. Yeah.
About the PAP here.
So use those concepts, guys. These are really helpful for breaking down a warm-up. If you're kind of stuck on like, okay, well, I'll just do one of these,
you take
and
the
then you're ready
weights
to
and
go.
then you do this, a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. Don't do it like that. Have some context, have some intensity, and some purpose get into your warm-up. Think about it a little bit, see what you need to warm up and how to warm up. If you have any questions,
702-558-2151.
That's the one.
If you're like, this sounds good, but I want to have a warm-up that's really specific to what my movement limitations are, come give us a call, sign up for a discovery session with us, check out our facilities, and we can help you get the most specific program possible for you so you can reach your goals faster than ever before.
Or if this sounds like really hard to do and you don't want to do any of that, have us do it for you, and then you can show up and just work out.
Yeah.
That works too.
Yeah.
We'll do the thinking for you, but if you're a thinker on your own, use these concepts.
All right.
See you guys. Thank you.
Easy.